Hey, welcome back to another episode of The Growth Engine with Ryan and Trice. What's up, bud?
Hi, Trice.
All right, so we're going to dive in because we this is part two of a two-part series focused on sphere of influence. So, for those of you who caught the first episode of this, we talked a lot about what sphere of influence means to us, and not necessarily, this is not about influencers or influencer marketing, but more about all the people that can influence the buying process, the buying cycle. And last time we talked about tier 1 and 2, which are really focused on direct sales opportunities, especially tier 1. These are people that are going to buy things from you. These are your best customers, and they're very honed in kinds of people. And tier 2 is sort of secondary or ancillary types of buyers that could buy, might buy, may not necessarily be a primary focus in the beginning, but will eventually be a focus. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about 3 and 4. Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about like why are 1 and 2 again? Why are they important? Who are they? And then let's talk about what that means to 3 and 4.
Yeah, so we'll start with I'll repeat the way that our workshops would happen. Would be
right.
We draw basically on a whiteboard. We have one section of tier 1, and these are the direct targets you want to go after in the next 12 months. They're the number one targets you decide you want to do your marketing and sales campaigns around. And then your tier 2 would be kind of like the next layer, right? And so in this exercise we discussed in our last episode is a lot of times as we start putting these down into the tier 1 and tier 2s, they start swapping back and forth, and then we prioritize them and put them in a hierarchy of the ones that are most important to go after. And that always turns into a really rich discussion on who, and the results always are different from what people think when they go into this exercise of who their top personas are. And so marketers out there, you think you know your ideal persona. Without doing this exercise, sometimes you miss it. And so this is why the sphere of influence idea and exercise and the workshop that I put on is really kind of a eye-opening piece of identifying the best targets short term for you to go after and put your direct mail and online campaigns and all the different marketing things you do.
Right.
Put your guns and ammunition behind these things to go after them. So we're gonna talk about the rest of the tiers in this sphere of influence besides your direct targets. These are all the indirect targets, the people who can influence the buyers. So they may not be the buyers, they're the people who are in front of your buyers at times.
Right. Yeah, I the way I look at targets 1 and 2, right, are mostly as you start, you're almost entirely focused on tier 1, right? These are core people that you've really honed in on, like who they are and what, why they're a good target for you, and all your messaging and campaigns and investment and sales activities are all based around them. And then what happens is as you mature as a company, right? If you're starting off as a startup, you may only pick one of those kinds of groups and then start your process. What ends up happening is you add others as your bandwidth grows and as you layer out and your messaging grows and your marketing grows. So tier 2 to me is really like we're a really mature company and we've got industries and buyers groups. So now this is almost sort of like, okay, this is our sales and marketing strategy for this group. And 3 and 4 is, okay, these are the groups of people that are going to influence our ability to reach and influence these people. So let's jump into it. What are you talking about with tier 3?
So tier 3 is these influence partners. And so in the partners side of this, the way I define it is these are the fans of your products or services and are influential in promoting your brand. So they can be referral partners or promoters. And I've done a lot of referral programs. And when you measure each month the people that are referring, and you ask that of leads when they come in and you say who referred you, and you track that, you often find there are just a few select handful of people there that are referring almost monthly. And you're like, wow, this is great. And and they're just a voice out on the street for you. So this category is like, who's real big fans of your brand and your company, or you as the CEO, who's big fans that are constantly directing traffic your way. And so
Yeah.
the reason why we want to identify these people is we want to identify them for opportunities for marketing or for sales, but maybe for some quotes. Maybe we want to do a video, a testimonial video. We want to take it the next level because we know they'll say yes. They love us. They're real champions for our brand out there on the street. And
Google
so
reviews. I mean, everything. Yeah.
maybe you want to take them out to lunch or dinner and say thank you so much. Like we appreciate you, and
Yep.
just to keep those leads rolling in, right? So the idea behind the sphere of influence is identifying all the targets out there that we need to touch in our marketing and sales campaigns and plans for the next year. And
Yeah.
so when we're done with this, you can go back and look at these and say, is there an action that we can do or something we can wrap around this tier 3 layer? And I think there's tons of things you could do.
Yeah, I do too. Um, depending on the kind of business you have, the way you will approach this group is very different. You know, industrial versus residential, B2B versus B2C. You're selling something direct versus you're going through a wholesaler. You know, like whatever your situation is. But there are groups of people, or even specific individuals, that influence the buying process for you. And I look at it also in the way that, like, even in relation to tier 1 and 2, you have people inside. This is often with like enterprise software or B2B, right? Where you're like, the decision maker might be a C-level person who you have to ultimately influence. That's your target. And other tier 1s might be other people inside of an organization that could be influencers in that process, or decision makers in that process in some way. Tier 2 could be the same way. Tier 3 could even be like, you know, frankly, like receptionists or gatekeepers. It can be all kinds of people that
Mhm.
keep you, or that could influence your opportunity to hit.
Yeah.
And if there are unique ways to reach those people, great. And if there are not, okay, fine. That's fine too. But the way I look at this is kind of your word of mouth group too. Like, I love former customers in this group myself,
Yeah.
because there's so many businesses out there that live and die by what their rating is on Google. And if Google, you know, or Yelp, or, you know, there's a lot of markets where Yelp is a really big deal. I was on a trip to New York once, and these two local New Yorkers decided every restaurant that they went to based on Yelp ratings. And because there's so many in a certain proximity, you know, that they're like, well, if I get into a part of town that I don't know really, really well and have a restaurant in mind, I go to Yelp and I look at their rating, and I was like dumbfounded by that. I'm like, people really do that. Oh my God. Like, as
Yeah.
a marketer, I was always like, Yelp's important. We need to get good Yelp ratings. But I was always more focused on Google because that's more important here where I am. So it was always interesting to me. But I think it's just a great way to think about this. These are the people that are going to influence future buyer. And how
Yeah.
do you use them?
Well, and these are people you can identify, you can name them.
Yep.
You know, in
Yep.
this exercise, we write their name right down there.
100%.
And what we also look for is there, if we list 5 to 10 people, are they all in the same position in another type of company or something, like if
Right.
it's B2B? What's really neat about this piece is it seems like always a person rises up here that's a real fan of your brand that actually has never used your brand, that's actually never hired you. And they're working
100%.
in like distributorships, and they know your quality's good, your service is good. So they know if somebody asks them, who would you use? You're in this industry. Like, he knows he will have no fail
Yes.
if he refers you, and he's
Yep.
never used you, but he just knows your reputation. He's got a good
100%.
idea about the industry and the word on the streets about who does good and bad. And so almost always somebody pops up in here, up in this category, and it's like, they've never used you. They just like you.
Yep. Yeah, we were talking this example yesterday, or yeah, it was yesterday, but our last show on this topic, right? Like, husbands and wives, and
Mhm.
the decision making process and things like that. That same kind of conversation happens all the time It happens online. I'm a big LinkedIn user. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. And I hear of people and start following content creators because of some connection to another person, right? And their content leads me to some organization. I've told 3 or 4 people about an agency that I've heard of that's really big and is something that I'm a big fan of. And I did it today. A former agency partner of mine, somebody was like, I need somebody I'm really looking for an agency that's in healthcare marketing. And I was like, tag, boom, here you go.
There it is. Yep.
Here's your person. This is somebody I used like 5 years ago. I'm a big fan of theirs. And my company stopped using them, not because I recommended it, but just the way it kind of worked out. And that's the cycle of agency life. But I'm like, hey, look, if you're in healthcare, I could name 3 organizations right now that are great healthcare agency partners. And boom, done. I am an influencer in this process. I'm not buying anything.
Yeah.
I got zero, skin in the game, but I'm more than happy to be like, hey, look, I'll tell you who I think is great at this, and you can figure it out for yourself if you like him or not.
Yeah.
Have at it.
And it's interesting in this situation to go back, since you're giving an example of a tier 3 influencer in this situation, how did those companies get into your top of mind awareness? And that becomes part of the strategy.
Yes.
So we're talking about the sphere of influence, but we're really talking about the beginning level of strategy. We brought that up last week. This is the step 1 that people have a hard time wrapping their heads around, who they're going to go after, the what, and all those details, because they're looking at all these options. They're looking at, all this open sky of opportunity. Yes. Where do I go? And this process gets it all down on paper and then allows you to pick and choose the things that make the most sense, that look like they have the biggest payback for your time and budget.
Yeah. So that's the great point here, because as you're talking about that, I was thinking of an example I just kind of alluded to her a minute ago. I've recommended this agency. I've brought up their content, their perspective on marketing a number of times in conversations over the last, 4 to 6 months. I follow probably 3 people that work there. I've never met a single person there. They have a podcast. So I'm going to let some marketing strategy out of the bag here, right? They've got a great podcast. It's very long format. I'm talking like 2-hour podcasts. I mean, it's deep, right? But these people have made their sort of cornerstone of their marketing on a certain topic. And I've, kind of followed it over the last few years. And my mindset has shifted the same way theirs has. And they've probably influenced my shift, frankly, in a lot of ways, because their content is fantastic. But they are a high retainer type of agency, right? They probably do work with companies that are of a certain type. And I would recommend them wholeheartedly as a great follow and a great conversation, because they help educate you on a topic. But I don't know that I would recommend to the average company to do business with them. 1, I've never talked to anybody that has. And 2, I know their retainers are, like not cheap. And they're not going to be for everybody, right? So if you're a $20 to $50 million company, they might be for you. But if you're a $5 million company, they're not. You need a CMO. You need to start that big gun process, because you've gotten to a certain point, right? Like, and that's where your engagement with higher strategic leadership and marketing begins. But so I'm an influencer for them, and I don't know them from Adam.
Yeah,
like never met them before.
And I love this example of what you've given, and I've done it. I've done it too. And
absolutely, we talk about this all the time.
I think this is a category that is not brought into strategy at all. It's just like, 100%. People think you can't influence it. They think you can't do anything in this area to get a bigger group of these influencers, or it's just kind of like what happens. And that's not true. You can actually force it and make it happen. Well, and
I'll give you another example. Like we talk about content all the time. If you're in marketing, or if you're a leader, business leader, CEO, and you're listening to this show, watching this show on YouTube, your content creates people like me. I'm advocating on this company's behalf, and I don't know them at all. I've never spoken to anyone there. So right there, you're like, hey man, look, this is a strategy. It's legit. It can work, because all of a sudden there are CMOs like me out there advocating for an agency partner that they've never talked to. That's insane. That's crazy. Right? Like, but that happens all the time in business and really can be a piece, regardless of what kind of business you're in, right? Not marketing, but there are people like that out there. There's subject matter experts out there that people are like, hey, I want to learn more about this kind of company or what it is they do. Forget the company part. It's not the company, it's the strategy and what their business is advocating a certain thing and in line with what you want to do. And all of a sudden it just starts to pick up its own steam. It's a grind, but it's a legit strategy for sure.
Yep. I've got 5 more tiers on here that we're gonna hit today. So I don't want to.
No, you keep going because I can rabbit hole on this.
I don't want to cut anybody short on this. This is something, if you're taking notes on this, use this as a guide. And I don't want to cut out any categories here. And my last 2 categories will go back towards a couple that Trice you put into this process. So the next one I've got here is a tier 4 is social influencers. So these are people on social media that you lift up and they lift you up by association.
Yeah.
Okay. You follow, you comment, you engage with them on social media. They help introduce your brand to their audience just by you simply engaging and then people being interested in what you say and then going and checking you out.
Yeah.
And then finding out where you work. And then you become like a spokesperson for your brand. And so these are people, if you have limited time in the day, let's say you spend 1 hour a day on social media engaging, you have to pick and choose where you spend that time. And if you identify these social influencers for your market, for your area, or for your area of expertise, you can lift yourself up really quick just by having somebody who is already popular with a big following engage with you. Hey, that was very insightful. Thank you for your input. And they're giving you kudos back. And all of a sudden, you've got 100 people that day going to your profile and checking you out to see what you're about. So this is what they talk about when they talk about social engagement. If you just randomly go on and comment on people you don't know, but you don't know if they're a following, you don't know if they have your audience already, your direct target audiences. So this is tier 4. The social influencer is about getting in front of your tier 1 and tier 2 guys. So who are your tier 1 and tier 2 direct targets following? Where are they going out on social media? Who are their heroes on social media? Those are the people that you want to put in this category.
Yeah. So to tag onto that, like if you have an hour a day or less, and you have to choose between, do I create content or do I engage with other people in the market who are already subject matter experts? And do I engage in their content and look for the lift from their audience?
Yeah.
The second one's your choice, because creating your own content can be a hard process for some people, and it's got to be very specific. I talked before about being very specific's a better word for it, but being very specific about what the kind of content you want to create. Well, you may not have the people, bandwidth, time to do that, but you definitely have the time to find these key influencers and comment on something once a day, and not simple comments like I clicked like and I agree. It's respond.
Yeah.
Because other people will see that and they will then come to you and say, who is this person? And what do they do? Who are they? Why are they relevant to me? And over time, that is a very powerful strategy to get in front of that kind of person. So it's great. Yes, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And I know that I can make a whole episode on this one because
this is one of my favorites.
I see people really botch this and like they really go in and they don't engage in a way that is thought leadership or that they have their own mind or own experiences to add or contribute to the topic that the social hero in this story is making a case for. And so
that's the key, right? Is you're a subject matter expert. So one, these social influencers shouldn't be your competitor. That's rule number 1. These are people in the market that talk about things because they are subject matter experts. So when you comment, you're not commenting on your company's behalf per se. You're like, I'm also a subject matter expert in the field.
Mhm.
And I agree with this person, and here's why. Or, yeah, this is an interesting idea. I'd layer into that in this way. Great, cool. You just added relevant context to this post. And now you are lifted because you are also seen as a subject matter expert. Boom. Your
Right.
job here is done. Like you just keep doing that every day. It will absolutely build on it. So
What the next group, so we're now in tier 5 of
yeah.
the sphere of influence. And tier 5 is social groups. This is really a cool part of doing this exercise with people, right? It's like
Right.
you have individual people in the company who might have have kind of like tripped onto this social group that happens to be in their industry, but there's
Yeah.
been nothing strategic done. There's been no research actually done. And so what's interesting in this exercise is this is the only time that I actually allow during these workshops for everybody to get on their phones or computers. And I'm like, okay, everybody get on it. Like let's get on there. Facebook,
Yeah.
LinkedIn, like we're hunting down now groups. And this is why we do tier 1 and tier 2, the direct targets first. We're now hunting down groups, social media groups in Facebook and LinkedIn that these direct targets belong to. So
Yeah.
they're industry organizations. They can be by titles. Sometimes there's groups by by titles. And so they all share, I run a CMO group on LinkedIn myself. So there are industry groups, trade groups. There's thought leadership, like, right. There's all kinds of things that are a perfect match depending on your direct target. And the list here can get crazy. And so I usually whiteboard it as they start just listing them off. And we start coming up with this massive list. And most people think, oh, there's probably not a group dedicated to this specific thing.
Yeah.
And then what they find out is there's 20 to 30. There's 20. Yeah,
there's like tons of them. Yeah.
It's endless. And they're like, well, there's Facebook groups and there's LinkedIn groups. And which ones do you? And
Yeah.
you can see the members in the group. You can see how many members are in each one of them.
Yep.
Which helps you decide which ones are good. And you can see you can actually go through, and sometimes if they don't have it gated, you can actually see what types of members they have. And a lot of them are highly focused. Even your industry trade organizations oftentimes have they have their own groups. And so if you already know,
there, frankly, yes.
Yeah, if you already know that's your targets, you can go straight to your industry organization and join right then and there and go after them. But there's so many, you got to list them, and then you got to do that prioritizing of them, because when you're then going to do your planning for your strategy, you realize we probably have to either divide and conquer, or here marketing is going to take a lead in this one or two groups. But we need this one to be the CEO. We need this, we need the sales guys to be participating in these groups. And so now we're talking about a real social sales strategy.
Yeah. This is where you build a true social network, where you say, it's not about my personal brand here, right? You're like,
right.
I can be a member of 5 different organizations, and another person on my team can be a member of 5 other organizations, and maybe one of those crosses. You can be very deliberate here about picking and choosing which person is representing your organization in which one of these groups, and cover a lot of ground, because then you can create content on the company's behalf that is shared by somebody and shared by everybody, and then shared inside these groups as well.
Yeah.
And so you have the ability to influence massive numbers of people when you do it this way. It keeps it really simple, but it is a very smart strategy. These social groups are, as far as LinkedIn goes, are, I think, a secret weapon, because I'll tell everybody, when you do this, there's a lot of crap in these groups too. There's a lot of salespeople fishing like crazy, right? As soon as you join one, you're getting hit up by a bunch of people to connect. You don't have to, obviously, right? Like, And also, if you want to speak to the group of people, you don't have to connect with all of them either. You can message the entire group if you want to. Like, there's a lot of opportunity here. And our point here is mostly identify the groups.
Yeah.
You can then later build a strategy. Like, that's the second part of this. We're not talking about, we're kicking around strategy ideas here, but the point really is there are a lot of groups out there that you just have no idea that they're really real. And you're going to have to figure out which ones are the most important to you. Start with the associations for sure.
Yeah. And so sometimes not. I mean, so I'm going to go back on a couple of things you said. I have actually been working hard this year on my personal brand
Right.
and a company. And so I like the idea. I like to tell salespeople and marketing people, look, if you're gonna go out and post about your expertise, you're doing personal branding at the same time. It's not lost ground.
Absolutely
If you leave this company and go to another company, your contacts and your network follows you.
Yeah, you're bringing your sphere of influence with you. And absolutely.
So it's a double weapon because you're helping the company and you both. And I love that idea. And I promoted that with employees in the past. It's like, look, I encourage you to go do that because they're going to find you, then they're going to find my company, and it's a double win.
I'm the same way. I'm not saying this is not about your personal brand. It is, but this strategy of like inside of your company, identifying these groups and figuring out who's going to tackle what and whatever. That's the company part, is just making a strategy about how do we connect with these kinds of people, and then also how do you use company content to reach these people.
Yeah.
It doesn't discount the fact you still have personal content that you can create that reinforces not just me as a subject matter expert, but also the company as a great resource to people out there. And there's that's a secondary piece, but that's more about your personal brand than the company brand or the blend of that, because they are blended together, I know, for most people. So yeah, I'm not discounting that by any stretch, because that's definitely a part of it.
Well, and we're not going to make this all about social groups, the whole show, but I will tell you, I've been in a lot of them. And the second I start seeing in their stream, all these promotions of everybody's own products and services and everybody just selling stuff, I get out. I'm done, because I know nobody's going to engage with that. And so I look for people who actually have real value in their group. There's an administrator who is really watching that content and making sure there's good guidelines and rules in place so that people aren't selling there all day, because it just burns out the group. And I've seen that happen so many times. So it is about engagement and adding value. And so back to your content creation thing, Trice, where it's like creating content for a specific group or the same types of groups, where when it's posted, has real value to that group, and it's specific to that industry or specific to that topic that the group's about.
Yep.
Now you're going to get engagement and response. It's if you're trying to do this shotgun effect where it's hitting everybody with this, I'm going to create one piece of content and it's going to hit all my targets. No, that's not good content. That's terrible content.
I would say this is 100% true. I'll give you an example. This week I added some new groups, and I was like, okay, I want to talk about the podcast. These are great topics. Let's share some of this content.
Yep.
I don't need to sell anything. I'm not trying to push a call to action. It's more, are these good groups of people that are interested in good content? Your marketing strategy in a lot of these cases, and I'm not going to dictate it for people, and I'm not going to write everybody's strategy here in a podcast, because that would take way too long. But it's not about selling anything. It's about being valuable.
Yeah.
That's it. So do not put a call to action, frankly, especially if you don't, in groups, you don't know anybody, stay away from that. Just be valuable. Actually, be valuable for a long time. Try to be valuable every day for 6 months and see what happens. I will tell you, the answer is you're on the right track, because people will seek you out because you're valuable, and not because you're good at your job. They'll figure out you're good at your job because you're valuable. They'll recognize you're a subject matter expert. You won't even have to. That's the focus here. Be smart, be engaging, be a subject matter expert, but not with an ego, but more like I'm in this too. We're all learning together, and here's my perspective.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and dialogue, and the rest will take care of itself.
Well, I like making uh, I like making this jump between tier 5 and tier 6. Like they're very relatable. Tier 6 is actual live networking groups, in-person networking groups. And so tier 6 is like, hey, what are opportunities out there that we may be missing? So most businesses that I've ever worked in or consulted with, when it comes to networking groups, there's really like just a few kind they join. The one that they join and try to checkbox this "we do networking" thing is their industry trade organization. That's not a networking group, unless you want to say networking for improving and increasing quality of my business and best practices. Yes, I think those are important, and
And
I do believe in
hiring.
that.
Those
Yeah,
are the only. That's it.
I believe in that, but
Yep.
we're not talking about that group on
No.
this sphere of influence.
Right.
That's a decision you make as a business owner. That's fine. That's not a marketing sales strategy.
Yeah, this
That's
is about growth engine, right? Like our
right,
purpose here is to help you reach customers, to
right.
talk about reaching customers. So this is industry groups are great because one, this is where you're going to get a lot of training, a lot of continuing education comes out of there. You're going to see where the market's going. You
Yep.
know, that's incredibly valuable. Plus a lot of connections to people that could be great hires in the future. All of that's wonderful and absolutely should be done. But what we're talking about is networking groups for the purpose of expanding your customer base. And
Mhm.
every city has a group for you, not just your chamber of commerce, right? Like
Which
other
does work.
types of groups, right?
Chambers are great.
They can
They're
be. If you're a
yeah,
local business, it can be very valuable,
yeah,
obviously. Yeah.
yeah. It depends on what business you're in. Small BNI type of network groups and those type, and there's all kinds of hometown breeds of that. Of
Yep.
these small. If you're in insurance, if you're do taxes, if you're an accountant, if you do HVAC or house cleaning services, all that type of stuff works really well in those. So you got to be realistic about it. I've joined many of these groups, and I've done some of these smaller ones where I got 1 or 2 leads out of it a year. That's not worth it, obviously, right? And so
I mean,
pick and choose the
depends on your
groups.
ticket, right? Like
Yeah,
if you're $100,000 project a year for somebody, sure, it's worth it. But if it's your average ticket is $2,500, maybe it's not. But
yeah,
doesn't mean it's bad. Like we talked about this before. Like connections of people connecting to people.
right.
If your network group leads to your social group,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Which of course it's going to, because you're going to connect on LinkedIn, and then things are going to build, right? That's totally fine. That can work. Is it a specific strategy? Maybe. Is it your best performing strategy? Probably not. But that doesn't mean it's bad, right? Like that's a great layering to what you're already doing, right? That's why it's not a tier 4. A tier 4, some of these are obviously related to how big is the opportunity to connect with people.
Mhm.
So, the thing I would say about this is like we're both in peer groups that are face to face. I'm in a CMO group. We meet. There's a ton of online interaction. And then there's a local chapter as well. Those are not customers, right? This is again, it's a great learning opportunity. Where's it, and great connections for me personally. But I'm not most likely they're not my customer opportunity, and even if they were friends, I'd be influencing their decision making process. I would not be making it for them, right? So
Mhm.
it's connected. It's not necessarily the same kind of direct relationship that you're talking about. So it's not that it's bad. It's just not the same kind of thing we're talking about here today.
Well, I'm talking about making sales and
Yeah.
these networking groups. If I need sales right now, I mean, I guarantee you, I can go to a chamber meeting right now anywhere in town, and I can get a lead. And that's this no brainer type of situation. Social media groups, with the sheer volume that are in them, you think you're going to get leads. Nothing beats face to face. That hasn't changed for 100 years.
Yeah.
It's if you want to get sales, good things happen when you're in front of people. So that's my number 6. My next 2 are ones that we were doing this exercise with a client, and Trice, you said they should be on here, and I agreed. And so this can be one category, or you can make it into 2. I don't care how you want to do that. but these would be podcasts, and then the next one would be YouTubers. And
yeah, I merged these
podcasts
two
are huge.
together for sure. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Yeah,
But
go ahead.
yeah, I merged these two together because they're the same type of person, right? I have some kind of program. It's either audio or video or both. And I interview people that are also subject matter experts. I'm willing to bring people in because I want to learn about new things, want to talk about new things. My audience is about learning new things. It's a dialogue between two people. A lot of this is free for people because they want content. Their purpose is to create content. The more engaging the content is for them, the better off it is for them. Obviously, the audience grows in it, but ultimately, when the audience grows, then they start to make a little money on that as well. But for you, this is my favorite thing in the world, and the reason is there is not a B2B company on the planet that their first thought is we should go get on a bunch of podcasts. But I will guarantee you there are dozen shows 100% dedicated to your market, whatever it is.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Nerdy and technical as you want it to be, I guarantee you there are people out there talking about it.
Yeah. But
that's why it's valuable to you. It's so targeted.
Yeah. So we go for this exercise, we go back to tier 1 direct targets.
Yeah.
Okay, we've already identified them, because if you get through tier 1 in this exercise, I'm shocked, because in tier 1 alone, every time when we go look at podcasts and YouTube channels that are hitting your direct target audience here.
Yeah.
I mean, I filled up a whiteboard. We had like 30 or 40 on there, and it kept going. And we actually said, okay, let's chop off all tier 2 stuff. Let's chop off the bottom of tier 1. And we kept on chopping them off until we had just the shows of the podcast that hit our very top target. And we still had 20. And we said, okay, now we're going to look at their audience and followings. And for that next year, what we looked at was which one of these can we call that podcast and try to be a sponsor, because they had such a large audience of our direct target. So, I mean, podcasters love to be sponsored. They love to get money, right?
Absolutely.
And so I know people get $1,500, $3,000 a show. So
yes.
So that was one thing that we did. But then also assigning a person in the company to be kind of the PR admin assistant to the CEO of, we got to get him on. We have so many opportunities here to get in front of thousands and thousands of our customers. We're going to try to schedule 2 or 4 podcasts a month for the entire year as part of your marketing strategy. And this is what I'm talking about with this exercise. Trice, most people skip something. They miss something that we just said in all these tiers. And this is
so
big
much
one
in there. Yeah.
I mean, they wait until they get invited to be on a podcast is what happens.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, you weren't proactive. You didn't take charge of your future in this situation. You have an audience that somebody else built, and you could piggyback that and go get them.
Yeah. When I think about marketing now today, I think about content first. Well, what is easier in the world than going and getting on a show someone else created? And all you have to do is have 5 to 10 talking points about who you are and how you help people. Why are you valuable? Answer that question for yourself. Write 10 bullets, get on a show, and tell those people why you're valuable. Somebody else did all the hard work already, right? Yeah. This is one, it's probably free. And if it's not, it's not expensive. This is a beautiful strategy. This isn't the old days. You're not Pepsi, right? You're not rolling commercials out at the Super Bowl, right? You're a small company, or you're a medium-sized company, or you're a startup. You're in B2B where, you can't do consumer type marketing. This is consumer marketing for you. It's literally talking to people who are 100% dedicated to what you do. Construction, IT, whatever it is. Go out there. I guarantee you'll find 5 or 10 that are amazing podcasts that have 10,000 followers, 5,000 followers. Pay to sponsor, once a month. something. I mean, even that small, and then go on the show once a month and talk about something. You'll get so much out of that.
Yeah.
Honestly, it just helps you amplify your voice.
We should have a podcast about podcasts. I know that other people have done that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
you and I can really go crazy on that one, because the marketing reasons or growth reasons why you do the podcast, when you're getting really in the weeds and specific on your strategy, we can give you all kinds of tips and hints that will really help you in this category.
This is what we do, right? This is, like, Ryan has a ton of foundational programs. We don't really talk about a ton about what we do like in this way, but everything we've talked about today included, every episode has been dedicated for the most part to the foundational work that we believe will help you build the kind of organization that's built for growth. Everything about this idea of strategy and how you look at these different sphere of influence groups is about where your marketing is going to layer into this. And that's where the growth engine starts to get amplified. And it's incredibly powerful. And by the end of this exercise, you know who your targets are, and you know where to reach them. And you can start small and you can grow into that. Frankly, you could stay in the small area and get on all the podcasts and make that 100% your focus, and then start create content. That's a beautiful way to do it. We write strategy like this all the time for people, because this is the kind of research they've never thought about doing.
Yeah.
And need to.
Well, and everybody asks, there is no, to my knowledge, and I talked to you about this about a month ago when I was saying, hey, there's no template for marketing strategy. There is no universal understanding for a template of market planning and strategy. There's more ideologies.
Yeah.
So here it is. This is a one sheeter that I've got, and it's got all of these tiers on here when we're done. And now we're ready for that final thing that you do, which is like, okay, we have everybody who we can include in that we want to market to this year, or that we want to touch base, or we want to have in this this marketing plan.
Yeah.
You could sit down with your salespeople and your marketing people, and you just figure out who's gonna do what for who. Yep. And sometimes you cross people off, like, not this year, not this quarter. We can't get to them. We'll get them later. And you start right sizing this list, and you start figuring out, okay, sales guys are going to take care of those groups, networking, social, like, okay, marketing is going to build the content for those groups, and get those groups aligned with our tier 1 target. And we need to pay attention and come up with a few things to do with those tier 3 partners. And you can quickly brainstorm some ideas on that. In 1 hour or less, you can pretty much have hands raised and taken responsibility for doing pieces of your marketing plan. Now you just want to formalize it and put it on a timeline and with deadlines, and then back it up with your designers and content creators. You want to back it up to make sure they're providing the things and the funnels and all those things that once they get leads, they'll pour into your core process, your machine that you build to capture leads and business to cycle them through to make them customers, right?
Yeah, we outline and utilize tools, strategies to help understand, not just like, okay, sales is going to do this, marketing is going to do that, leadership's going to do this, operations is going to do that, all that kind of stuff. But also like, okay, what's our monthly cadence? How are we going to meet? How is content going to be created? Who's sharing what? And you can build a foundation of that layer that goes across your entire organization. And I'm not talking about every single person. Employee engagement is incredibly powerful and important, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about key leaders that are subject matter experts that you've decided are going to be voices for your company. They're in sales, they're in operations, because those operations guys, frankly, they probably know more about the industry than most of us will ever know. They'll forget more than I know, that kind of thing. And it's because they live and breathe it every day. and they're not selling it, they're doing it. And so, that's especially true in things like like manufacturing, where the guys that make stuff are experts in this thing. So this is what we're talking about here is like you really have an opportunity to look at this entire gamut of influence opportunities and make some decisions about who the voices are in your organization, how marketing is going to help you create content, where's the CEO valuable, where's sales valuable, where's marketing valuable, and make a tier of a channel for yourself. That includes content that will be outbound within groups via your organization, as well as the content you should be creating for yourself that can be on your own channels. So like it's an incredibly powerful churn.
Yeah.
And it takes some time to get some rhythm and some momentum. But once you do, you can really build a fantastic model and scale it to I'm 5 million or I'm 50 million. And this is what it looks like, or 500 million for that matter. I've seen it work really well for groups that are very mature. And why? Because they have tons of people in their organization that are already subject matter experts. You just got to put them in the right place to capture it and talk about it. And they've got to might have to be well coached a little bit. So what? That's fine.
I've
pay off.
I've only been doing this sphere of influence for about a year, and I started testing it in early 2021. But we've already started seeing the results come back from clients who are using this process. And I want to give you kind of a final example here of what happens because we did this right. They're your top tier direct targets for tier one. When they have the need, right? Okay, they've already seen your social posts. Not just one of your people, but like 3 to 5 of the people in your company have already actually connected with him on LinkedIn. Yeah. So he's seen you there. He knows you're after him. So he knows what you do already. Okay. Yeah. So he doesn't trust that. So he asks somebody in the industry, that he trusts and knows. So he's in this tier 3 area. He asks them, hey, who would you use for blank? And he says you in your company. And now that person's going, well, crap, that's the same guys that connected with me. I see their social media and their content all the time. And guess what? I was listening to this podcast the other day and the CEO was on it. He sounds amazing. And that's crazy. And you know what? My favorite social influencers, they're engaging with them also. I just figured, they were too good for me or the price is too high or something. But if you're saying that they're a perfect fit for what I need, man, then I couldn't disagree with that. And, you start to circle the wagons here and you really hit them multiple times with multiple people. Nobody else may know in that market who they are, but your direct targets, they definitely know who you are. And that's the goal. We don't care. We're not trying to win a most popular contest. We only need to be most popular with our direct target. And that plan, the sphere of influence, helps you nail it.
Yep. Yeah, I think the thing people need to really get their head around when it comes to reaching people now, because Apple's making the change on privacy and Google's moving toward making a change on privacy, your ability to know things about customers is greatly diminished. So you think every person in the world in business is like, well, I'll just force them through some gate where they've got to register for something and I'll get their email address. Look, these customers are smarter than you. I hate to tell you that, but they are, right? So this influencing process is now incredibly valuable because the way in which you reach them is through their own network of people. So now you're like, you've influenced some connection they have, who your content showing up in some channel that they pay attention to. You're showing up in podcasts, you're in video, whatever it is. You're doing these interviews, so you're relevant to them in some way. You're circling them. They start to engage with your content. They start to engage with more of your content, and all of a sudden now, they're really on your radar, and you're really on their radar. And they may not even be in the buying process yet, but you're still influencing them. So now when they get to the buying process, this is the old marketing adage, right? Of like, now they're in the buying process. They're finally like, okay, we probably should evaluate a new tool that does X. And they start to develop a short list. They're going to ask relevant people in your market, who are the best people to be on my short list? And your name's coming up. And they're like, well, duh, of course I'm putting them on my list. I don't know why I didn't think of them first.
Yeah.
That's literally what happens all the time. And or your Google numbers start to go up, right? Whatever it is, all of this influence is driving the funnel. This is the circle part of the funnel. It's not the downward part of the funnel. It's the I'm hitting them everywhere part of the funnel. And they pull themselves through it. You don't, if the old days of like, I got to hit them over the head with ads is over. I mean, you could still do that. And that's definitely still part of this. But they're self-fulfilling in their own part of your funnel. And it's all driven by the sphere of influence.
Yeah.
All of it.
Well, that's well said all the way around. I put on the bottom of the worksheet that I do, and you may have heard this before, Trice. It's fine, finding your tribe. And they talk a lot about that with social media. It's find your tribe, the people that get you, you get them. And to me, this is the types of work that you do to start to discover who your tribe is, and to grow your tribe, and to grow your fan base, and to get real influencers and create promoters out there. And so it is a lot of work. I mean, you touched on that several times. It is a lot of work. It can take time and repetition. The payoff, though, for those that can stay with it and are disciplined enough to do it, the payoff is huge.
Yes. Yeah, it's very hard. Understanding all the places and all the ways and create that in and of itself is hard. Creating content to influence this process, that's a slow grind. It is. And a lot of people think, oh, well, it's just bandwidth. It's a bandwidth problem. It's not a money problem. It's not like media where I'm just buying my way into people. It's not true. Because one, great content is not cheap, frankly. And it's important to you. So therefore you want to be very purposeful in it. It's not just willy-nilly. And so it can be something that requires some investment, but that's okay. It's just a different way of doing it. You don't have to start with advertising and media. It's the other way around. That is second, third, fourth down the road, frankly. The first part is good content, good system, and right places. And then you start to layer in after that. So
yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's all the time. That's all the time we have for the day. And there was great discussion of taking this exercise and workshop into actual strategy and actual campaigns that are going to start bringing growth and revenue for you. So if you got any questions about the sphere of influence, please put them below, and or reach out to either one of us. We'd be glad to have a conversation one-on-one. But that's all we have for the day.
Yep. Good topic. Thanks, everybody.